everything, you know. I went to the mountains of Tanzania, and I was there, and I saw inscribed on the wall from ancient times, TEC. And as a fellow Neanderthal, I thought, you know what? I would be perfect as that, and for that to represent me. GG. Oh, the Otto's so fun. Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to talk about a little leak list, and obviously when it comes to leak lists, remember that, at least I don't put too much credence into it, especially since a lot of them are normally complete hooey. I believe the last leak list we had from the last updates got 1 out of 15 or 2 out of 15 things correct, but this one has a little bit to it, since of course, if you have a look at the screen, you can see it is from Noodle Cup 31. And 2 of the vehicles that are on here have actually been announced for the crafting event that is coming up. Now, I will say, when this was posted, the SU-76D devlog was already out, so that's kind of a gimme, and also there was leaks yesterday of a few pictures of the German F4F, so, it's a little bit up in the air if this is true or if it's not true, but at the end of the day, what it does is it gives me a platform to be able to talk about some pretty interesting vehicles, and the 2 that are listed, the Yūgure DD184 and also the XM8 AGS, are 2 very interesting vehicles, and I thought it might be worth having a look at them in this video. Even if they don't come out in the crafting event, I think these 2 vehicles definitely have a very high chance of coming to the game in a later update or a later event, so why not have a chat about them now and show you what they're about. So the first one we're having a look at is the XM8 AGS, as it's known, the M8 Armored Gun System. This thing is an American vehicle, which I think the best way we can describe it is it's been in development hell for about 40 years. There have been so many different variations of this machine, spanning different companies and also different contracts, that it is all over the place what this thing is supposed to be or what it's designed for, depending on if you look at the 1980s versions of this, or the 1990s versions of this, or even the 2020s version of this. It is kind of all over the place. The basic idea behind the M8 Armored Gun System is that it was supposed to be a light tank which would actually replace the Sheridan when it came to the airborne division. So basically, this was designed to be air-dropped, where something like a Sheridan was not able to, but it would also be air-portable, and that would be its replacement as the Sheridan. It was also supposed to be a replacement for other light vehicles, such as tow-equipped Humvees as well, but unfortunately, at least right now, that isn't the case. One of the interesting things is one of the roles that it was supposed to take was actually taken by another machine that we have in the game, the Striker, the M1128 mobile gun system. So that, at least, is kind of interesting. The main machine itself, it's made of welded aluminium alloy, so very light, not too strong, but designed to try and stop small arms fire. The closest thing I would compare it to is something like the VFM5 that we have in the British tree right now. It is, in its current setting, armed with a 105mm, a soft recoiled rifled gun, and also has an engine which is around about 550 horsepower, which is a Detroit diesel engine. What's interesting, since this is a very modern vehicle, it has different levels of protection depending on which one you pick, and this was actually something created by BAE. BAE is a a company which actually bought out United Defense in 2005, who were working on this project from the 80s, and they were actually awarded a contract along with General Dynamics by the US Army as part of the Mobile Protected Firepower program. And this meant that over the last few years, continuing into 2022, they are actually developing a bunch of prototypes which will have different sets of armor packages, different levels of armor packages to be able to push forward with. So the first thing to understand is there are so many different ways this could be implemented, and the three basic ways that you could have is the level 1, level 2, and then level 3. So level 1 is the airdropped variant of this. It's basically the lightest variant, and the idea is it would be designed for rapid deployment and could be airdropped by a C-130, the Hercules. This would be able to defend it against stuff like small arms fire and also shell splinters. The level 2 armor is a little bit more obviously heavily armored, and this would be able to be carried by a C-130, but it wouldn't be able to airdrop from it. Instead, it would have to land at an infantry-secured airfield, and then it would be able to get into combat. Level 3 armor, though, is designed for contingency operations, so going forward, and actually longer operations than just quick in and out jobs, which the other two would be more designed for. And this was an armor package which was designed to provide protection against light handheld anti-tank weapons, but because of the level 3 armor and the amount of weight that it adds, just to give you an idea, from the level 2 to the level 3 set, it adds around about 7,000 pounds worth of armor. It wouldn't be able to be airdropped, and it also wouldn't even be able to be carried by a C-130 Hercules. It would instead have to be air transported by a C-5 Galaxy or a C-17 Globemaster III. So, depending on just those three variants, it could be completely different when it comes to its armor protection in-game. Now, since this thing is a very modern vehicle, and since, we have stuff like the VFM5 already in the game, it wouldn't be a surprise if you're mainly going to face stuff like APF-SDS anyway, so no matter what armor you have, no matter what level you have, it's not going to really make too much of a difference to the vehicle. But the main thing to understand is there are just so many different variants of this. You could easily see an event vehicle version, and then a tech tree version, and even then maybe a premium version on top of that, which would be kind of cool. It also was kind of pseudo-designed to also be exported to overseas customers, but unfortunately they also didn't want the design, and all of the contracts around it were cancelled, apart from obviously this new one with BAE Systems. We're going to have to see if this thing actually comes out and is actually used in a large way, or if they decide to put in a different version of this, which would be the M8 Thunderbolt, which is the AGS 120, which is it, but instead of having a 105, it has a 120mm with an autoloader, which to me sounds pretty cool. And then we have the Yūgure DD-184. Now, this is kind of an interesting machine because it's a destroyer of American origin that was actually used by the Japanese in post-World War II. And the reason why I find this one a little bit odd to believe is because Japan has so many interesting destroyers and cruisers from the pre-war to World War II period. It seems a bit odd that they would add an American destroyer from the World War II period to the Japanese. It just seems a little bit odd to me. But anyway, the start of this DD-184's life, as I said, starts with the Americans, and the name of the ship was the DD-664, known as the USS Richard P. Leary. This was a Fletcher-class destroyer, so similar to one we already have in game, which has the single 5.5-inch guns, the 127mm, which are incredibly fast firing for, their type. It also had a ton of AA armament, which is probably the difference between it and the Fletcher class we have in the game. It has 10 40mm AA guns and 7 20mm AA guns with torpedoes on top of that as well. So that would make it, slightly more powerful than the standard Tech Tree Fletcher class that we have. Now, instead of focusing on the destroyer itself, because it actually has quite a boring World War II career, the interesting part is actually about Richard P. Leary himself. Richard Phillips Leary was born on the 3rd of November 1842 in Baltimore, Maryland. He entered the United States Naval Academy in 1860, and during the American Civil War, he served on the screw sloop USS Canandaigua and the monitor USS Sangamon, assigned to the Atlantic blockade. And during tensions with Germany over Samoa, Leary commanded USS Adams at Samoa from October to December 1888, and in the Spanish-American War, he commanded the USS San Francisco off Havana in Cuba. And from 1899 to 1900, Captain Leary served as naval governor of Guam. Retiring in 1901, Rear Admiral Leary died on the 27th of December at Chelsea, Massachusetts. So this guy obviously involved heavily with the United States Navy in the 1800s, and this is the namesake of course, the ship. Now, how does this all relate to Japan? Obviously, we've talked about this being an American ship. It is, a Fletcher class, obviously American. Where does Japan come in? Well, after World War II, mainly in the 50s and 60s, a lot of American machines which were decommissioned by America were actually sent to Japan as part of the whole rebuilding or defense idea of their forces. And the Richard P. Leary was one of these machines. So it went along with her sister ship, the USS Haywood, or the DD-663. It was transferred on the 10th of March 1959 to Japan, where it served in the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force as the JDS Yūgure DD-184. And Yūgure actually stands for Autumn Twilight, which is a pretty cool name. The ship then, after serving its time from 1959 to 1974, was returned to the US and was stricken from the Naval Registry on the 18th of March and then sold for scrap in 1976. So overall, it served with the Japanese for nearly 20 years, a lot longer than it actually served with the Americans. With the Americans, it was basically laid down in 1943 and decommissioned in 1946, since it was seen as not required. So if this comes to the game and is a nice little rank 3 premium destroyer for the Japanese, I won't be annoyed. I just wish that, Japan would explore the other options that they have natively designed to them. But this is the 2 vehicles that are sat there in the leak list. We'll see if they come true or not. Who knows? And as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Hosest Kishot, Hans, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.